big movie blockbuster on the way tomorrow night here on BBC One, showing Uncut. Nicolas Cage and John Travolta are arch rivals, trading more than just punches in Face Off at 9:10. Coming up tonight, the countdown to departure continues for the castaways after the news.
I reckon I could be a really good dad.
How far would you go for a friend?
We need to bring a young family to the island.
How long could you live the lie?
I'm not asking you to lie.
That's what it sounds like.
Oh, Kenny, do you want to help me on this one?
No, I'm having fun watching.
2,000 Acres of Sky begins on New Year's Day at 8:30 on BBC One.
A journey of passion.
I've never been to Belfast.
Well, after this, you can come up and have tea in our house if you want.
I'd like that very much.
Of devotion.
There are men who are good at fighting. Nothing would make me feel better than to have you by my side now.
Never thought he'd change your mind, Ernie.
And desire.
Have you ever kissed a girl, Ernie?
Yes.
Do you want to kiss me?
Powerful new drama.
You breaking your mother's heart.
We have given hope to Irish men and women everywhere that they will live to see the Republic established.
Rebel heart.
Is there something wrong with our mommy's cooking?
I've never had better this feeling, I can assure you.
Sunday the 7th of January on BBC One.
The news now on BBC One with Nicholas Witchell.
Britain experiences some of the heaviest snowfalls for nearly 20 years. Road, rail and air services have been disrupted. Thousands have been stranded. After 2 die in bomb attacks, the Israelis seal off the West Bank. A security alert at Buckingham Palace as a paraglider lands in the forecourt.
In the Midlands, was it a race attack? The explosion that ripped a shop apart and left a man critically injured. And this snow was blown away, but we're warned the big freeze is on for the next few days.
Good evening. Temperatures are well below freezing again tonight in many parts of the country after a day when much of Britain has been under a thick blanket of snow. The conditions have brought chaos to many road, rail and air services. The worst affected areas are Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and Western England. And weather forecasters say there's more to come.
The first widespread snow of winter carpeted the country in white and brought movement in many areas to a standstill. This was the M40 in Buckinghamshire. Stranded lorries, unable to climb the hills near Wickham, caused miles of tailbacks. Some emergencies were only reachable by helicopter. One rescued a couple and their baby on Dartmoor after 5 hours stuck in their car. First light this morning in Glasgow and a struggle to get much beyond the front door. Some parts of the city were under 8 inches of snow. This has been Scotland's coldest winter for 5 years.
We can only apologise to passengers for the inconvenience caused by the disruption to services this morning.
Many trains in Scotland, as elsewhere, were delayed or cancelled this morning. The icy tracks all but invisible in some places. Nationwide, the blanket of snow makes Railtrack's massive programme of holiday period engineering work look even more ambitious. Despite the efforts of gritters and snowplows, there have been scores of accidents on the roads. In northeast Wales, a supermarket lorry skidded off a bridge in a blizzard and overturned. The driver was wearing a seatbelt and walked away unscathed.
Well, the first thing this morning, the weather was horrendous. The A55 was like a skating rink. So, and unfortunately the driver, there was nothing he could do. He'd lost it and it just slid off.
Because the snow came late in the night, especially in the south, it settled on what was already sheet ice. Ice that'll return with another freeze tonight. The AA says breakdowns have been running at 1,300 per hour. Runways buried in several inches of snow forced the closure of many major airports. Snowblowers swept the tarmac at Liverpool, which was shut from 5 o'clock in the morning, and airline staff de-iced planes. But 4,000 travellers were still held up. The number delayed at Luton was even higher. Around 15,000 were due to pass through today.
There are only 2 people to deal with all these cancelled flights, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
And at Glasgow, closed for 9 hours, passengers voiced similar frustration at the airport's inability to cope.
Here I feel that they've been caught on the hop, but the weather's been forecasted, hasn't it, to be poor.
But far from the maddened crowds, people who didn't have to travel, like these families in Birmingham, were able just to enjoy the snow. And certain residents of Dudley Zoo felt more at home than ever. George Eakin, BBC News.
Another part of the country which has been badly affected is Northern Ireland. Some areas had their heaviest snowfalls for 18 years.
As if the worst snow in 2 decades wasn't enough, then came the fog. This is one of Northern Ireland's busiest motorways, and while most main roads were usable, many country roads were simply impassable. The road service fought off criticism that it had not been prepared. The salt it had used doesn't work at temperatures lower than -10. It's been as low as -15. Quite apart from transport difficulties, some social services had to be cancelled. It was impossible to get into housing estates. And the ambulance service had to reduce cover to emergency and essential outpatient cases only.
We also have in place, strategically placed across Northern Ireland, 4-wheel drive vehicles manned by paramedics that where an ambulance has difficulty, that those vehicles can also be mobilised. But we're retaining those as a final contingency to ensure that we can maintain maximum cover.
The weather was bright today, but at one point all 3 main airports had been closed. 200 people spent the night at Belfast City Airport, and some travellers were angry at how they'd been treated.
Some people have been here 24 hours, and we've been taken off the plane, so that the next lot of people that came later are on the plane, and that's why we are so angry.
The airport said they'd coped as well as they could, but some passengers are being told the next flight they can get is on Sunday. For some, though, it's fun. I don't remember snow like this in Belfast since I was at school. Young ones always enjoy the snow, but for many grown-ups now, it's a case of bah humbug. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
Well, our correspondent John Brain is at Luton Airport, where thousands of people were stranded for much of the day. John, what's the situation there now?
Well, the airport here has finally reopened, but as you can probably see behind me, it's come too late for most passengers who've simply given up and gone home. It's been a day of abject misery for them. 90% of all flights were eventually cancelled. The handful of flights that have been getting off in the last hour or so, well, passengers have been subject to delays of up to 12 to 14 hours. Very frustrating for them, particularly for those who turned to the flights because they were fed up with the problems on the rails.
So now, what is the outlook there and at the other airports which have been badly affected today?
Well, the outlook here is that they believe they can clear the backlog, but only if there is no heavy snow tonight. If there is, they say the situation will be back to square one, and that really is the picture across the country. Edinburgh Airport, which had reopened, has been closed again tonight. Other airports fear a similar situation.
John, thank you very much indeed. Israel sealed off the West Bank and the Gaza Strip tonight after 2 bomb explosions killed 2 Israelis and injured another 15. The attacks occurred a few hours after a planned Middle East peace summit between the Israelis and Palestinians was called off.
It could have been worse, much worse. The number